Hey folks, it's Mary, aka MercyTriumphs, and this is Slow Crochet. And today I want to talk to you about the third installment of my little mini series that I'm doing throughout this year, where I've challenged myself to crochet up the 5 most popular shawl patterns that I could find on Ravelry. Now, Ravelry is not the be-all, end-all of shawl patterns. You can definitely find patterns on YouTube. You can find them just with a basic search engine search or an image search. They're all over Pinterest, all these kinds of different places. Even somewhere like Etsy will have patterns for sale. But for me, Ravelry is a good metric for which patterns are really popular because it can show you how many people have done these projects. Now, granted, not everybody who does these projects or works them up actually post photos or post the fact that they actually did the project. But for those that do, it does keep a tally. So I have done 2 other shawls before, and I am trying to work through all 5 of them here in the year of 2026. And I want to show you your favorite and mine, my version of the virus shawl. So fun little bits and pieces of this shawl, right? Like, this is a shawl that's been around for a good while, let's see, if this was published, hold on one moment. All right, I was just checking the dates on Ravelry because in my mind, I thought that this shawl had been around since 2010, but actually, I think it's been 2015. Over 8,000 people have posted their projects, and that is just on one listing in Ravelry, not to mention some of the others and the video tutorials. And even, I will say, I was just doing a search engine search, and I looked at images and I found there were many versions or many iterations of the virus shawl written up as a pattern or as a chart. And so I did follow the original designers, at least a couple of their initial videos on YouTube. They do YouTube tutorials for it, and that's what I'll have linked below. But again, this shawl pattern is pretty widespread. So from what I understand, I could be very wrong with this, but I guess I'm just imagining that this shawl came out when there wasn't as much crochet content available, and so maybe people picked up on it, and I don't know. I mean, this, I guess, could be a bigger discussion about pattern and design and intellectual property, that kind of thing. I know that you cannot copyright a crochet stitch. You can copyright the text of a pattern. You could copyright a video. You could even copyright an image. But you can't copyright a double crochet or a treble crochet or a chain 2 or anything like that. And so I'm wondering if this pattern kind of fell in the no man's land. Maybe there were initially also some issues between whether the original pattern was posted in German and English. So maybe someone saw it in English and figured it out and then made that available. I don't know, but I do know that the pattern now is paid for. The original is a paid for pattern, unless you want to go and look at those original YouTube videos, which I don't think were there the first time I did this, because y'all, this is not the first time that I've made a virus shawl. I've made and frogged at least one in the past, and I might have made one where it transitions into some granny squares. But this, not granny squares, into some granny clusters or granny stitches. But this, again, is the original, and you can see, if you've ever made this before, it has these beautiful shells, kind of scallopy patterns. It is a 4-row repeat. So you have this set where you're doing the chains, and then you go a row of 10, another row of 10 right on top, and then you do some chain 1 spaces in between, and then you repeat again with your chain spaces. This pattern is very easy to memorize, and I think it's a very beautiful and effective design. Now for this one, this was a Hirschner's cake that it was like a mill-in, so I'm not sure how much yardage was in it. I think this was like a cotton acrylic blend, and this was from at least last year, if not the year before. So I couldn't really tell you more about the yarn. I think it was a 1 weight though, and I used a size F. I used my Hero size F hook for it, which ended up being a really great hook for this design. So I can drop in some images, some film of me wearing it and modeling it. Y'all know I like to do that. It also was a shawl that worked really well with blocking. It didn't necessarily need to be blocked though, but I think the bigger it gets, the weight of it can kind of help all of the stitches really be shown. Now, interesting feature of this shawl, you have the arches, but you have all these giant holes. And so when I was trying this on, I was thinking about some different ways that we can wear shawls. And I was thinking about some scarves that kind of have some little holes left in them, and you can thread one end of the scarf through those holes and cinch it up. And I thought that this shawl would be a good candidate for that because, especially if you're using a fine weight yarn, you can easily just kind of thread it through and you could probably do all kinds of different loops and designs and sleeves or ties or whatever. I also think this would be an interesting shawl to use like one of those sticks. I don't necessarily use shawl pins that have a long pointy stick because I feel like I'm gonna stab myself. I'll prefer like some form of a lightweight brooch perhaps. But I think it would take really nicely like to one of those where you have like a circle and then you kind of poke a stick through and it kind of locks it together. I think it's maybe like a Celtic design. There's a whole history that I feel like I have enough, idea about history, but not enough study to be able to tell you exactly when that kind of thing was available. Actually, hold on one moment. All right, so what I was thinking of was the Tara brooch. Oh my goodness. I was thinking about this design that has the circle and the stick clasp. The other form that I think would be really great for that shawl is called a penannular brooch. Oh my goodness. Point being, it's a circle with a stick that goes through it and it's kind of connected and so it keeps it together. But the great thing about something like this is you already have those big enough holes that you're not actually going to stab through and ruin your stitches. The pins or the stick is just going to find these bigger holes naturally. So in terms of making this shawl, it took me a while. It is rather large compared especially to the last one that I did that I only did one skein of fingering weight yarn. But yeah, this one took a bit more yarn, so a bit more time. How did I feel about the making of this shawl? Number one, it was pretty nice because I could get into a nice rhythm with it. I don't think I made too many mistakes, and if I did, it was pretty easy to fudge. I'm not going to take the time to try to find those mistakes because, in this design, it's pretty hard to go back and see exactly where those differences might be. I will say, I thought that I knew how to count to 10 until I couldn't. And I would find myself doing 10 stitches and then I would do 10 on top and then maybe I would miss one. And I ended up going back time and time again of trying to count to 10. And it's so interesting the way our brains work, where you can look at a set of items and know immediately what they are. Like I could look at a set of 4 and be like, that's 4 just on sight. I don't have to count. I don't have to think about it. But once you get up to 10, you really do have to count. And it's something just in the way that our brains work where we can see these smaller numbers and just know them instantly. But once it gets past a certain level, I mean, this has been researched by neuroscientists. It's a known thing, but it does get to be more confusing. And so I would find myself trying to look at my stitches and be like, how many more do I need? So I'd like break it down. Okay, here's 3. Then I need however many more. And then I would second guess myself. And so it did end up taking a bit longer, not just because it was a larger shawl, but because I was constantly counting and double counting. And despite that, I still made several mistakes. So in terms of ease of making, I think it is pretty easy. But I do think that counting to 10 many times over, that got a little bit old by the end of it. So are there any changes that I made to the pattern? I will say yes. It did call for like a chain 10 on some of the corners. And instead of that, I did a stacked single crochet and then chain 7. That's just something that I've gotten more and more in the habit of doing. I don't really think that that's changing the pattern a whole lot. But I think that, there's so many different ways that we can trade out like chain 2 or chain 3 to stand as a double crochet. So as long as you know what your substitutions are, I don't consider that changing the pattern. I don't think it would be fair to write up a virus shawl pattern if the only thing I changed out was like the stacked double crochet instead of like a chain 3 or something. That to me, it's just a natural thing. It's the same preferences that you develop in the same way that you might hold in pencil grip or knife grip, right? It's just those little things that we do. But that's it in terms of making the shawl. Would I recommend this shawl to a beginner? Well, yeah, I think I would. There's nothing really complicated about it. It's chains and it's single crochets and it's double crochets. I do think it's pretty forgiving if you make mistakes. However, if you do make those mistakes, they might happen more frequently because of counting to 10 over and over and over. And the tendency, at least that I had, and I've been crocheting for years and years, it is one that I've had the tendency to make those mistakes even when I was diligent not to. So in terms of a mindless project, I'd probably give it like a middle of the road. It's not super mindless, but it's also not one that you can go on autopilot. So I think in terms of my preferences, I don't see myself really wanting to do this shawl again. I do think it is beautiful. I do think the design is very effective. I think it's very rhythmic. It evokes a lot of images, whether of waves or of wind, just that gentle rhythm. And I think that plays really nicely with even how the border ends up being scalloped. I did just do a row of single crochet across the border there when I was kind of playing yarn chicken. I don't think I have very much left of this deepest navy blue. But yeah, I do like it. Where would I rank the virus shawl in terms of how much I like them compared to the other two, the Elise shawl and the South Bay shawlette? I think in terms of a proper shawl, I'm going to put the virus shawl as number 1. That means I'll put the South Bay shawlette as 2, and then the Elise shawl as number 3. Again, Elise shawl, it had a little bit of complication that just didn't need to be there. Even the South Bay shawlette, I like this a lot too, but I find this kind of interesting. Even the comparison between these two, they look somewhat different, but at the end of the day, this one was a 2-row repeat, but it does rely on this fan design, right? Similar thing here. It is a 4-row repeat for this one, but it also relies on that fan design. So something to keep in mind. Both of these also predominantly are double crochet. So if that's something that you're comfortable with, I would say go for it. This one is a bit lacier than the South Bay and even the Elise shawl. So if you're looking for a little bit more coverage, a little bit of warmth, you'll probably want to go with something like this versus the virus shawl. I will say I am definitely going to put this one into rotation because starting with that paler gray and then moving into the blues, I think it'll work really well with the color season stuff that I've done. I think it'll be a good kind of feature. Look, even there, you can kind of see my skin light up in different ways than if I were doing the green here. That's just a practical thing. Not every shawl that I make do I expect that I'm going to like, and I'm not necessarily using colors that I would like specifically want to wear. Like I'm doing these with yarn from my stash, so it's okay if it's not for me in the end. However, I am really enjoying this process. I have started a 4th, but I think I might jump to a different one out of the 5. So yeah, look forward to the last 2 installments of this video series. I'm having a lot of fun with it. And to be honest, I'm recording at the end of April 2026, and I'm starting to feel strange when I don't have a shawl in my hands that I'm working on. So that's another fun thing about this. I'm just enjoying the process of doing some shawls that I wouldn't do otherwise. Do let me know in the comments though what you think about the virus shawl. Is that one of your favorite patterns? Have you made it multiple times? Have you never made it? Do you like going to that original source that has those tutorials, or Do you go to a different free pattern or even just charts? I would love to hear your perspective on it. Again, I think it's a great first shawl if you're interested in that. And yeah, I would also love to hear if it's one that you made when you were earlier on in your crochet journey. And if it's one that you have memorized, you go back to time and time again, if you've gifted it, things like that. Do let me know in the comments. And also let me know if you agree with my rankings so far. I'm curious to see what you think as well. Thank you to everyone who has commented and liked and encouraged me on this crochet YouTube adventure. I certainly do appreciate you. I'm so glad that you have taken your time to spend some of your life with me. And yeah, for whatever reason, I'm not your cup of tea. Thank you so much for listening this long. I do appreciate you, and I do hope I'll see you again soon. Bye.